Homeboy. Homeboy. Brothers, there's only one blood, cause it ain't no sense in us trampling on the stones. It's us, down to the bone. Blood is thick, waters were known well, cousins were kept apart, mothers were often memories. Fathers were not favorites on the farm, for he could do some harm, he could wreck the master scheme, for he, brothers, could dream. Your mama ain't no saint, your daddy died in a shallow stream, but your uncle, Dr. King, did have a dream, my brother. And what is your real excuse? Why can't you study your lessons and stay in school? Why can't you study your lessons and stay in school? Free love and sex ain't nothing but a game. Don't never last, try hope. Take a chance on love, register to vote. Money ain't everything, but you could buy her a ring. Listen to little blackbird sing. Buy you a record of a yardbird with wings. Get into the swing of things.
Homeboy by Sunchi Ali. Welcome to the Qumran Report. May the peace and blessings of the life-giving creative spirit be upon you and upon your family. My name is Melvin Ishmael Johnson, coming at you live from Morris Media Studio. I'm with my special guest, in-studio guest, Kurt Maxey. Our call-in number is 1-323-293-3375. This week on the Qumran Report, we will talk about the AKAs and the Deltas, black sororities, and their impact on the black community. Also, in the second half of our show, we will have on the line playwright George Corbin, who's played The Daughters of the Kush, the must-see play everybody's talking about. It opens at the Stella Adler Theater in Hollywood, and here is a short clip about the opening.
Well, at the core of the black experience is being able to...
Yes, we got a little short 30-second clip coming up. This is a great play, The Daughters of the Kush. We're going to get into an in-depth discussion with it.
GWC Productions presents The Daughters of the Kush, a world premiere from the Roby Theater Company's playwright George Corbin. The play is set on Midwestern College campus in 1963, a black sorority encouraging new pledgees until a request from a white co-ed challenges the concept of sisterhood. October 13th through October 29th, Friday and Saturday, 8 p.m. Sunday matinees, 3 p.m. at the Stella Adler Theater, 6773 Hollywood Boulevard. Reservations and information call 213-908-5032 or get your tickets by visiting corbinkush.eventbrite.com.
Okay, The Daughters of the Kush open at the Stella Adler Theater this Friday, October the 13th. Runs Friday and Saturday at 8, Sunday at 3, and ends its run on Sunday the 29th. The Stella Adler Theater is located at 6773 Hollywood Boulevard. Ticket information 1-213-908-5032. Right now we have on the line Judy Bowman and Johnnie Faye Fernandez, two longtime members of the Delta sororities. Welcome to the Qumran Report.
Hey, Melvin.
Hey, hi.
Fine. Judy, can you tell our listening audience, I'm going to talk to you a little first, and then we're going to move over to Johnnie Faye. Tell our listening audience a little about your background and how you first came in contact with the Deltas and became a member.
Sure. Well, it was at the University of Illinois back in the 60s. And it was really a compromise between me and my parents for me to go to the University of Illinois there at Champaign-Urbana. I got accepted to Berkeley, but you heard about Berkeley in the 60s. My parents had heard about it, too, so they weren't about ready to let me go there. So I ended up being able to stay on campus at the University of Illinois. I majored in pre-med, and I needed some recreation and sisterhood, and I met some sisters, beautiful sisters, who I bonded with and found out about Delta Sigma Theta sorority through that, friendship.
Mm-hmm. Now, Janet Faye, same question for you. How did you first come in contact with the Deltas and become a member?
I grew up in southern Illinois, in East St. Louis, Illinois, and in high school, several of my teachers were Deltas, and my aunt was a Delta, but we didn't have a Delta chapter for teenagers at that time at school, so I belonged to the Roarers Club, which was Sigma Gamma Rho, and I got a scholarship to the University of Illinois when I graduated. So, and I went straight to, I had scholarships from the Deltas, a residential scholarship from the Deltas, and I lived in their house there.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, now before we before we continue with our in-depth discussion, I'd like to read about the founding of the Deltas.
Good.
On January the 13th, 1913, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated was founded by 22 Howard University undergraduate students who had earlier been initiated into the Alpha chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. The 22 were dismayed at the lack of progress of Alpha Kappa Alpha to move beyond its function of orchestrating the affairs of campus society at Howard and wanted to reorganize the sorority to address higher purpose, like public service and woman advancement. The new initiative wanted to establish a national organization, enlarge the scope of the sorority activities, and change its name to reflect a true purpose. They felt that Alpha Kappa Alpha was solely a female derivative of the Beta chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity with no individual meaning and were not Greek distinctive letters. They also wanted to change the symbols, change the sorority colors, and be more politically oriented. In 1912, these 22 undergraduate voted to change the organization name to Delta Sigma Theta. This new name was to reflect the group's desires to change the directions of the group. The 22 undergraduate Alpha Chapter students sought to move towards social activism and greater public service rather than continue to focus on social activities. According to Delta Sigma Theta historian Paul Gideons, the 22 young women were concerned that since Alpha Kappa Alpha was not incorporated, there were no legal entity. Since there was no charter, there was no authority to form other chapters, thus limiting their ability to enlarge the scope of their activity. So I thought that was so interesting. It seemed like they were one of the first sororities or fraternities to actually incorporate and become a non-profit entity. Would you like to comment anything on that, Judy or Johnnie Faye?
This is Judy. When I was pledging at the University of Illinois, Alpha Nu chapter, I knew really nothing about the history of the organization. And I'll tell you, we did, part of our pledge class did learn the names of the founders. I'm not sure that I could name all of them to you now. What I was going to say is what I've learned since then is that, I think all of the so-called Divine Nine Black Greek organizations have made their mark, socially, politically, and educationally, to lift up the race, so to speak. So I'm happy to hear you read that history, and I guess my point is, I knew little of it back then, and just happy to be part of the Black Greek experience.
Mm-hmm. What have the relationship to the Deltas meant to both of you? Can you give me some feedback on that?
This is Johnnie Faye. the relationship, our relationship with the Deltas is very strong among those of us from Alpha Nu Chapter in the 60s. But I thought, I'd like to ask a question. If you're talking about the daughters of the Kush, why are you talking so much about Delta Sigma Theta? Because this play is not based on Delta Sigma Theta. And I don't want, I'd like not to have the public have the impression that it's based on something about Delta Sigma Theta.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the daughters of Kush and Damp in a little while. But on the last show, we talked about the whole history of the AKAs. We did the whole show on that. And I wanted to give our audience the sole background of the Deltas, because I consider these to be the two top sororities of the so-called Divine Nine. And since the play is about sororities, I just thought it was a good chance to get in depth. It's a lot happening with these sororities and fraternities as opposed to their impact on the black community. That's what we've been discussing the last three shows. But this is what we're talking about, the Deltas. And since I got two Deltas on the show, this is why I want to get some feedback on some of your thoughts about it. Kurt, you want to say something about it?
Yeah, I think part of this is due to the fact that the director of Daughters of the Kush is a Delta. Mm-hmm. And like you said, in the past two programs, you were dealing with the Divine Nine and how they started and their development. So we're not trying to focus on the Deltas because obviously in the play it's a fictitious sorority that's involved, in the plot line of the story of the Daughters of the Kush. But subconsciously, I think maybe Deltas has been used around on the set or whatever because, like I said, the director of Daughters of the Kush is a Delta.
Yep, and my younger sister also is a Delta. She graduated from Tougaloo and Ole Miss, Dr. Hattie Johnson. So we talked about. So I got a personal relationship with the Deltas. I want to know a little bit more about them.
Oh, well,
yeah. Go ahead.
I think what we can I feel more comfortable with, because I'm definitely not a spokesman for Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and you should, official information you should get from them. Mm-hmm. However, I can talk about sisterhood because that's one of the reasons I'm in LA now.
Okay, well, talk to us about it. Tell us. Let me hear your thoughts on that.
Both of us pledged Delta Sigma Theta at Alpha Nu Chapter in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, in the 1960s. We were made at different times, but Alpha Nu Chapter 1960s Deltas have kept in touch all these 55 years, and every 2 years we meet, and in different cities. We meet in different cities, and we relive our college days and share what happened since then. So we have a very strong bond. We've also, since we left there and had started meeting, we also created a scholarship to aid African American students at the University of Illinois, because when we were there, there were very few of us there, and we were close, all the Greeks and the non-Greeks, because there weren't that many of us on such a large campus. But we established the Hattie Hilliard Fund, for a scholarship fund for African American students at the University of Illinois.
And Melvin, this is Judy again.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of sisterhood, I know, you and I and, people on your production team have talked about sisterhood as being one of the themes for the play. And maybe Johnnie was just getting ready to say this. She's here because of sisterhood. One thing is, she and I are both born on the same birth date, February 8th, so we think of ourselves as sisters in that respect. But certainly we're sisters, and Melvin, I think you know, and maybe Kurt, you know as well, these sisters searched for me for like 40 years because from University of Illinois, I was there only 2 years. I couldn't make it in pre-med, so I had to rethink my game plan. So one of my uncles told me about Spelman, so I discovered that I could actually do what I liked, which was read and write. So I went to Spelman, and I majored in English and psychology, and lost touch with these sisters. And so it took them 40 years to find me, but they finally found me over at Roby up on the 3rd floor of the LA Theater Center. So Johnnie Faye is here now because of that sisterhood and our birth date, to help me as I convalesce through, this last, illness that I've had. So it's sisterhood.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask two of you this: what do you think? What is the importance of black sororities to the black community?
Well, Judy, again, when I went to Spelman was a little traditional in the sense that it was all about, I guess, studying and being in class and going to chapel, not only on Sundays but Wednesday for Vespers, and they didn't think for some reason that the sorority life added to that experience that young black women were being offered at Spelman. So I'm saying that to say we've come now to know, when I say we, adults, black adults, know that, sisterhood and educational achievement, educational mentoring, community service, those kinds of ideals that we want to project and to protect and to foster can be weaned, so to speak, or demonstrated as a member of a sorority. So I'm saying all that to say, it was kind of interesting to me that for some reason a black Greek organization for women was not something that was fostered at an elite school like Spelman College back in the 60s. I was there from 65 to 67, and that was just kind of interesting to me. My community efforts and my political awareness and my social responsibility and my growing up was through SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and I learned some of the habits that I still have today from being their communications person, in the sense that I was the one that, since I love to read, I would read all the magazines, and that was an era where there were all magazines and newsletters, so I clipped all the things that were written about any of the people like Stokely and Cleve Sellers and Rap Brown and Harry Belafonte and all the people that were working in Lowndes County and coming through Atlanta, to kind of get away from what was going on in Alabama and whatnot.
Well, is there any kind of alliance with the other sororities, the other black sororities, in terms of a working relationship?
Let me go back to the previous question, which is the effect in the communities of Deltas. In my community in St. Louis, Missouri, and East St. Louis, Illinois, there are about 5 very strong alumni chapters, groups, and they do a lot of Delta Sigma Theta is very active in that community, as well as other Greek organizations. So because they're doing social civic activities and service programs too. for children during the holidays and for seniors. I mean, the black community, I think the Greek organizations among African Americans are more active in alumni chapters after college
Mm-hmm.
than our white counterparts.
Mm-hmm.
Because the fraternities and the sororities make sure that they work for scholarships. They offer scholarships to college, high school graduates, and they raise money for those scholarships and do a lot of stuff in the communities.
Mm-hmm.
Mentoring as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah.
I kind of got the same feeling as Johnnie Faye just stated when I was on the SC campus a couple of weeks ago, and I was putting flyers around, and I went into the Black Alumni Association, and at SC you got the Black Alumni Association, and you also have the Black Students Union. Needless to say, once you're out of school, you have better finances to promote scholarships and involve with yourself more deeply in helping out the community. And when I went into both the different offices, you could see the difference. I mean, wham, the BAA, you felt more like you were almost in a bank, as opposed to the Black Student Union. It was more of a comfortable atmosphere for the kids, the young adults to mingle and talk and socialize, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. So, also, Judy and Johnnie Faye, I want to ask you a little about hazing. For our audience members who don't understand that, can you explain what is hazing and your thoughts on it?
No.
Mm-hmm.
That's Johnnie Faye. No, I cannot.
How about you, Judy?
Well, I have just one story that might be interesting. I didn't think of anything that we went through. Johnnie Faye and I, she said, we weren't made at the same time, so we're not shipmates. We didn't go across the burning sands at the same time, but we have that affiliation because of Alpha Nu. But on my ship, we had 6, and one of my shipmates tells me the story, and I just shared it with Johnnie last night. For some reason, we were talking, and that shipmate reminded me that one of the things that we needed to do, she couldn't see a way to do it, and so I ended up, kind of like shouldering whatever it was that we had to do, a series of things, little obstacles that we had to overcome. And she remembered it, 40 years later, and she never hesitates to remind me if I need anything. It's like, you got it, Bowman.
Mm-hmm.
So, we didn't really have hazing. The public things that we had to do were dress alike. We were pyramids, and so we had a duck that we pulled across the University of Illinois. And Johnnie Faye is laughing, and I'm saying that because that was public. You know what I mean? That was something that we did that was public. But in terms of hazing, it was really, crossing the burning sands, from my experience, was an effort to create a sense of bonding and a sense of having to rely on each other, and a sense of knowing that there are obstacles throughout life, and we happen to be 6 sisters, that were facing those obstacles together. And if one of us didn't make it, we had to figure out a way to make or help the other one to make it. And so that worked, and that's why I'm a Delta today.
It also built our self-respect and our self-confidence that we could face obstacles and overcome them. Hazing, well, I think it happens in a lot of other places besides Greek organizations. Because my first job at an electric company in my hometown, I had to join the union, and they did me some kind of little slight hazing. So I'm sure it happens. It's a way to prove that you're worthy to join whatever organization you're trying to join, and I don't think it's particular exclusive to the Greek organization.
I attended the high school I attended had what they called "quote unquote" off-campus social clubs, and I had to pledge for about 3 weeks. And guys would ask me to do stuff, and if I didn't do it, I got a SWAT. All right, you wrote me up on a book, and it was to prove your loyalty to the club that you were in, and there were different types of clubs. Some clubs just had athletes in it. Some clubs just had student body. People who were student body presidents, so on and so forth. Some clubs had, people that were very social. And there were certain occasions at times I was asked to do something and I refused to do it. I'd rather take the SWAT than to get involved in the danger of it. So, like Johnny Faye says, this is something. Hazing is something that occurs outside of just sororities and fraternities. I mean, it's in the armed forces and everything else. And I'm not, and I don't think it's it's not that good of a thing. I mean, there's got to be a certain level where you say, hey, we can go this high and we can do this. But there was nothing that I went through that was dangerous. But as a teenager, you could look at a situation and think it might be dangerous. And so a couple of times I refused, and I took the SWATs.
Okay, before we get some closing comments from Johnny Faye and Judy, Kirk, any particular questions that you would like to ask them while we have them online? Yeah.
When we had the reading, I know nothing about Greeks, more or less. But during the, I produced the reading of the Daughters of the Kush, I guess last year, and I can remember a woman. I can't remember the colors she was wearing, but she had a coat and maybe pants, and it was either red or whatever. And she was talking.
Whatever, crimson and cream.
Okay, so what club is that? Is that Delta or what?
That's Delta for sure.
Okay, all right. Here's my question then. And I think she was from Florida or Mississippi. And she mentioned. Was
it Barbara Jordan?
I really can't recall, but she did mention. She mentioned white women had joined. A white woman had joined her sorority, but unfortunately, due to my age now, I can't remember as much as I used to.
That was at Tukalu.
Okay. Yeah,
Civil rights, white civil rights.
And about what year was that then? Was that
in the 60s?
Okay,
70s, early 70s, late 60s.
Yeah, I can't. And it was very interesting. But then I can recall our family. I have we're all over the country. We have some Maxeys in Oklahoma. And I can remember, I can't remember her. It was an Italian woman. She was like a freedom rider, I think, and she got shot.
Viola? Was it Viola?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And, I can remember going to Oklahoma City and just being almost like scared to death, because what's going on here. But the woman at the reading. She was. I mean, she was just decked out, and she was very, very proud of the fact that
She was
that this woman. I can't remember if she was Jewish or not. That she had joined a black sorority.
Yeah, that was at Tukalu. My sister was there at the same time. Let's get some closing comments from. Let's go with Judy and then Johnnie Faye.
Well, I just want to thank you, Melvin, for inviting me and my sister to share some thoughts. It takes us back a while, and to support George, a wonderful writer, and his vision for this play, Daughters of the Kush. I'm looking forward to being there on Sunday at the matinee opening weekend, so I'll see you there.
Looking forward to seeing you there.
And you can ask George some questions on Sunday. Remember that. But I'd like to make a comment about sisterhood. Judy's observation. I've had my 50-year high school reunion, and to do social media now, she says she got rediscovered. Her sisters rediscovered her up at the Roby. I've been rediscovered by people I went to kindergarten with.
Oh, wow.
And I can remember this young girl helped me. My mom opened the door and said, "See you later, alligator." And this girl took me up, and we walked up the stairs, and we went into kindergarten. And here I was, like 50 some odd years later.
Yeah. Sitting
at her house, talking with her mom and some other people from our high school class. In L.A., a bunch of us went to the same elementary school, the same junior high school, and the same high school, and that creates a sisterhood and a brotherhood in a certain way. It's a longevity, and it's trusting people, loving people.
Okay, Johnnie Faye, what were your closing comments?
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me to your podcast, and I'm happy to be here to help my sister in her time of to comfort my sister.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking forward to seeing the Daughters of the Kush because it seems to be a very interesting play.
Yes, I think you love it, and thank you very much for calling in. We're looking forward to seeing you down there Sunday.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, Judy and Johnnie Faye.
Hey, have a good day.
You too. Bye, Kurt.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to play the sound clip from the Daughters of the Kush again, the little 30-second clip, and then we're going to see if we have George, the playwright, online. Clip, and then
GWC Productions presents The Daughters of the Kush, a world premiere from the Roby Theater Company's playwright George Corbin. The play is set on Midwestern College campus in 1963, a black sorority encouraging new pledgees until a request from a white co-ed challenges the concept of sisterhood. October 13th through October 29th, Friday and Saturday, 8 p.m. Sunday matinees, 3 p.m. at the Stellar Adler Theater, 6773 Hollywood Boulevard. Reservations and information call 213-908-5032 or get your tickets by visiting corbinkush.eventbrite.com.
Okay, that's the Daughters of the Kush. I don't know if we have George online yet, the playwright, but we're going to go right into it, talking a little about that. Kurt, tell me, how did you first get involved or hear about this play, The Daughters of the Kush?
Great question. I had a podcast show called Words and Things, and I had put out the word that I needed material to just do on the show. And Judy Bowman, who we just talked to, she was aware of the Daughters of the Kush, and she gave it to me to read. And I gave it to my co-partner, co-producer, Vanoy Burnell, and we did a scene from it. But the thing that attracted me, since like I said, I am a neophyte in the cultural life of the Greeks, fraternities and sororities, I loved the melodramatic aspects of it. Mm-hmm. And it reminded me of things I had seen, films more so than plays, that were made in the 40s. You know, it was a melodrama, and the characters were complex. They weren't superficial. So I looked at it as I write for actors, so I saw it as a good piece for actors. Mm-hmm. And it had, it was a suspense drama. So I can't give away the ending at all. Yeah. And that was the main thing I picked it.
Let me ask you a couple of questions about that always stand out in my mind. Going back to that time period, W.E.B. Du Bois developed this concept called the talented 10.
Right.
Where he felt that 10% of the descendants of the slaves of America, if you got educated, you'll reach back for the other 90%. But Carter G. Woodson came along with his book a couple of years after that called The Miseducation of the Negro. And he pointed out that where he thought the flaw was the type of education. He felt that if you got the Western education that they were pushing, that the 10%, the more education they got, the more of a distance that they would have with that other 90. And we seem to see a lot of that now. But we hear a lot, man, most of the early black intellectuals was involved with black fraternities. We don't hear a lot about that concept and relationship to the black female or the black sororities. How did they fit into that concept that Du Bois was talking about?
I really don't know, but I can say this: there is a difference. Mm-hmm. And I started reading a bit about Du Bois, and the 10%. You and I we love history, mm-hmm. So I can just use one phrase, and it's divide and conquer. And when I look at this 10%, I really don't see it moving back to the 90%. I see it going forward and maybe being isolated. I happen to live I live in downtown Los Angeles, so I see homeless people on the street and everything else every day. Mm-hmm. And I've traveled in cities in Europe, and I don't see homelessness. It doesn't compare to what we have here in Los Angeles. So the 10%, I think it's just something that's max to me of a separation. I think maybe we need to go from the bottom up. Because
I know even though Du Bois wasn't that much of a what you would call a religious, spiritual person, but he probably pulled that from the Talmud, Judaism about the 10% tithes from an economic point of view. I thought it was a valid concept, but that's what the next question I was going to ask you is why in a city like Los Angeles, the black intellectuals can't have an impact on what's happening in the Skid Row community, because 90% of the people you see living in these tents in like a third world country in that downtown Skid Row area are African Americans. What do you think the disconnect?
I can't figure that out yet, but I can again historically we just whoever Caesar was just right. Divide and conquer. And we have the trickle down theory and the economic trickle down theory. I've never have you seen it? I've never seen it trickle down to help the homeless people. But first Bush president, 1,000 rays of light. Mm-hmm. Where did 1,000 rays of light end up at? It didn't end up at Skid Row, and you have such a talent pool in Skid Row. And you have people who have fought and served for this country, and they come back here, and there's no safety net for them whatsoever, you know. And I was not into service. I went to school and did the best I can to get deferment and, you know, graduate from college, so on and so forth. So I'm not
Well, they're
aware of that, but since you were in the service,
they're more than enough resources for veterans. Because I remember about 5 years ago, we talked about what we thought the solution to solving this homeless problem in that Skid Row area, and what it was 2 steps. Number one, make the homeless problem the homeless veteran problem, and then get the federal government to subsidize a solution. In other words, pay for the solution, because it was the federal government who had traumatized all of these veterans by putting them in all of these so crazy combat situations and then bringing them back. That was the first step. And the plan that you come out with that, lay that out for the rest of the homeless community. That was a long-range plan about 5 years ago, and they begin to do that now in terms of taking care of veterans. The second part of that plan was to get this, these community organizations, religious organizations, to work with the city to get all of these empty properties that we have. And the different churches and religious organizations began to develop programs to move people, to make them part of their structure, to move them out. I know I had talked to Reverend Murray about it. He had come up with what I thought was a great concept in terms of the religious organization. He said that he thought that each one of these churches, synagogue, church masjids should have a homeless component that should be part of their structure in terms of working people back into the community. But for most of the veterans that I talk to, the problem...
This is George.
Oh, George!
Hey, I've been trying to get through for, 45 minutes.
Yeah, but your time was... Your time was 11:25, but since I got you on the phone, let's get into it. Well, look, we have George Corbin, the playwright. We're probably projecting an image of George on the screen so we can see how he looked. But George, what is the message of that you want to leave with the audience about the Daughters of the Kush?
I want to leave a message that all of us, especially people of color, in our institutions that support us, we have to be careful to make ethical, moral decisions in tough situations where we identify with, we love this sorority, fraternity, whatever organization that we perceive as doing good. But when you run into a situation that challenges you, you've got to think long and hard about making the right decision. And that's not easy sometimes. Okay.
Well, do you because one of the things I like about this play, it's just what you mentioned, the fact that when the group when the sororities came into a conflict, that they sought a solution as a group, in terms of instead of moving in a lot of different directions, whether that solution was negative or positive. The thing that I looked at is they sought this as a group. Can you talk a little about that?
Well, that's normal, I think, that those of us who are within an organization, who have close relationships, and we have an identity, would seek a solution that potentially protects this organization we love and identify with. We would seek a solution that wouldn't harm the organization, and sometimes that causes us to discount all of our values or stated motto. For instance, my fraternity is, I say this all the time, I believe it, the emphasis on manly deeds. What does that mean? Making the right decision in tough circumstances. Scholarship is easy, and love for all mankind, just not your chapter or organization.
Mm-hmm.
But
so you, I was looking at some of those great pictures that we had for the booklet, and I saw one of the pictures. I think it was 1962. You were at a formal ball for the Alphas or something like that, and so you have been consistently involved with your fraternity on a regular basis. What have that relationship meant to you?
Well, first of all, I wanted to correct that assumption. Like hundreds of thousands of members of Alpha Phi Alpha, depending on your age, you go through periods of your life where you're very active, and there are periods perhaps that you are not active because change of job, family situations, but you return, you look for the opportunity to reconnect and re-energize within the organization. So that was my experience. I became an Alpha at Penn State, 1961. The picture you referenced was a ball which encompassed included was Alphas, AK, and a few Deltas.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And my girlfriend before I met my wife at Penn State.
She was in,
okay. Yeah, a sensitive area.
Yeah. Well, okay, we better leave that picture alone then. Look, before one more question before I know Kirk want to ask you a question, but what are your thoughts on hazing? Can you talk about hazing? First of all, explain that to the audience. What is hazing, the purpose of hazing, and your thoughts on it?
Well, first of all, I think the original purpose, and maybe in some organization it continues to be the purpose, they assume that putting individuals in a group, small group, through, let's say, sometimes demeaning, sometimes painful rituals, like the traditional use of the paddle, will somehow increase the identification ultimately with the fraternity or sorority. And it's meant to make one's subservient to the brothers or sisters and go through an experience that and I emphasize the pain, whether it's emotional, physical, and I don't buy it at all. I was glad our organization changed many years ago, along with organizations, other fraternities, sororities. When you give power to a small group or an individual, if that person has his or her own problems, as in my play, by the way, they can take it too far. People are put in danger, occasionally seriously hurt, and as you've seen at Penn State, my school, death.
All right, Kurt, you want to ask George a question? I got another question I want to ask him, but I want you to.
Oh, sure. I got plenty of questions. Okay, we know that this deals with a sorority. So why do you write about a sorority instead of fraternity?
Well, I like women better than guys. I've been told I pick up women's dialogue especially well, which made me feel good. I just thought the potential of a offered by a sorority over a fraternity made sense. Yes, I could have written a play about a fraternity, but I think some of the emotional content, the relationship, the complexities would have been more difficult to build into the fraternity version.
Well, let me ask you this, George. I always want to ask you this. I want to ask you, who is your favorite playwright that influenced you? You can't name me. You can't name Kurt. You can't name Judy. What noted playwright out there?
I'll give you a couple. I think our original playwright, the creator of A Doll's House, who influenced so many future playwrights,
Ibsen,
yeah. I think, and I have it there in the bathroom, by the way, over the commode, and I read it regularly. The realism and a strong female central character, it just flowed naturally, and I got the idea of, hey, how powerful a well-written character with a good story can be. The other one, of course, and at the top of the mountain is, as mentioned by thousands of writers, is August Wilson.
Prolific playwright.
Of all his plays, the one that I've enjoyed the most and gotten the most out is actually Radio Golf. People tend to mention Fences, etc. But Radio Golf connected, it may be the time period, the political decision-making. It resonated with me. And by the way, I like Sam Shepard, but I will mention one non-playwright, and that is Walter Mosley.
The novelist.
I have his book right here. I'm not sure how many read it, but Little Scarlet. I pick it up regularly. I just flip open to a page, and I just enjoy the rich character dialogue. I mean, I could just read a couple of...
Okay.
It's like eating appetizer or good dessert.
Okay. We just got a few more minutes. I want to play another clip, but give me your closing comments. Got about another minute for you. Give me your closing comments and tell the audience why they should come out and see this play, The Daughters of the Kush.
Well, first of all, I think you will find it engaging, challenging, and I hope at the end of the play, after there's going to be some disagreement among your friends and your group as you talk about the play. The number one reason is some superb actors, young actors, with one exception, young. I think you're going to identify with them, and in many cases, really like them. And as they bring my play alive, and I think the play is timely if you pay attention to the news. These issues are still
bound.
There.
All right, thank you. The playwright, George Corbin. Thank you, and I'll see you over there tonight. Thank you very much, George.
Thank you.
Now, the last portion of our show will be devoted to community voices and event. On October the 25th, 2017, 7 o'clock, the Nasana Play Reading Series at the Moments Playhouse. We will be reading Agape by Ladarian Williams. And our next broadcast is next Thursday, October the 19th, 2017, 11 o'clock a.m. The topic is the need for a national black theater. And I would like to play a short 3-minute clip from Kim Sanders that I had on the Qumran report last year. And I asked him about the conflict between the playwrights and the actors in the 30s that destroyed the effort to create a national black theater company. Here's a clip.
Yeah. Well, at the core of the black experience is being able to think holistically. At the core of the African experience is the ability to think holistically. And even though Du Bois was saying at the starting point it was about the playwrights, he still had a holistic agenda. And actors wouldn't have been left out. He was trying to put together a structure so that we could develop a systemic way of sustaining the culture. When you are exposed, it's very seductive. Actors were on stage. It's very seductive when you're getting a lot of attention. And I would assume that probably had something to do with the split. You know, this desire to be seen, as opposed to the desire to maintain the integrity of the mission. And we still have to be mindful of that today, because there'll still be those systemic, seductive elements out there to try to split up agendas, split up missions. And if we don't have the discipline to recognize that, then we won't have any more success than they did. And we have to be, mature enough to avoid infighting. We have to be mature enough to avoid infighting. It has nothing to do with us disrespecting your individualistic way of thinking, but if you want to collaborate, then there has to be some humility. There has to be some listening, teaching, silence, educating, all happening at once. And what we tend to do is we get lost in what is first, as opposed to saying that's first in a particular perspective. But that's not discounting second, third, fourth, or fifth, because they're all pieces to the puzzle. I I think along with grant writing, you're going to need to appeal to those who have economic power that are not a part of the government.
Yes.
Who look like us,
yes.
who don't look like us,
yes.
who are committed to humanity, committed to children, committed to women's rights. And all of those people need to be addressed at the exact same time. And we need to be careful about pushing each other away, saying that their ideas don't matter. And we also need to listen to the youth and ask them what are good ideas and how can those ideas be implemented, because sometimes the older innkeepers don't want to sit down and let the youth be energetic and use that vibrancy and creativity. Sometimes the youth don't want to sit down and listen and establish their powers and their creativity and their discipline. And so they go out there and it's easy for them to be figured out and they become a casualty. And all of that talent is wasted. So there needs to be a lot of internal work on every person to understand the importance of buying into a collective agenda, because that's who we are as a people.
That's right. Kirk, we probably got about one little minute to a quick little minute. Can you give us a little quick closing comment, and then we'll close it out?
Great. I'd like to come back and discuss the clip we just saw, because I agree with a lot of it.
Yeah, next week
we're going to just tell you guys, people out there in the audience, come see this play. It's entertaining. It makes you think, just like George says. There's black, white, and gray in this piece. And I'm of the opinion a play, even if it's a comedy, will make you get in a car with whoever you're with or by yourself and then think about it the next day after you've seen it.
Okay.
And this is this packs a wallop.
Yeah, they'll love him. Okay, I would like to extend a special thanks to Judy Bowman on the phone with Johnnie, Faye, Fernandez, playwright George Corbin, and my in-studio guest, Kurt Maxey. Please listen to past shows of the Qumran Report by Googling in Qumran Report. Thank you for tuning in to the Qumran Report, and from your host, Melvin Ishmael Johnson, may the peace and blessings of the life-giving creative spirit be upon you and upon your family. I leave you with Homeboy by Sunchi Ali.
Homeboy. Brothers, there's only one blood, cause it ain't no sense in us trampling on the stones. It's us, down to the bone. Blood is thick, waters were known well, cousins were kept apart, mothers were often memories. Fathers were not favorites on the farm, for he could do some harm, he could wreck the master's scheme, for he, brothers, could dream.